Why, hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Independence Public Library's Science Time. As always, I am part-time scientist Mr. Alex, and today we're going to be working on a really cool experiment that I like to call Cloud in a Jar. And as the name suggests, with this experiment, you'll be able to create your very own cloud in your very own jar. And we're using the fundamental principles of states of matter and a little bit of knowledge of the water cycle in order to do this. And the only things that we're going to need in order to do this experiment is we're going to need some hot water, we're going to need some ice, we're going to need a jar to put everything in, and very lastly, we're going to need some kind of spray, like air freshener, or hairspray works great if you've got that. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn on our electric kettle, and we're going to use that to get some hot water that we're going to pour into the jar. Like I said, I'm using an electric kettle for this, but you could also use a tea kettle on the stove at home, or if you don't have access to either of those things, if you place water in a cup in the microwave and let it get warm enough, that would work too. We're not getting our water to boiling, we're just getting it to hot. And because of that, because we're getting water to be hot, even if it's not boiling, I highly recommend that you absolutely get a helpful adult to aid you in heating up the water first. Because even though it's not boiling, like I mentioned, hot water can still burn you, and that is not fun. So absolutely get a helpful adult to help you with this part. So like I said, I'm going to turn on the electric kettle. It's one of the best ways to get warm water for this. And we're going to let that heat up. And then once that is all heated up, not quite to boiling, we're going to open up our jar and pour the water from our kettle or from our cup that we got out of the microwave with hot water into the jar. Once that's in there, we're going to place the lid back on it, but we're going to put it upside down so it makes a little bit of a bowl. And now with mason jars, you know, it kind of slides around a bit, so you're going to want to be careful. You want to make sure that when you put the lid back on, it is still sealed, even if it's not on. There's no, like, little holes peeking out. And it's a little bit of a balancing act, but it's very possible and not too difficult. You just have to be a little careful with it. Once we've got that, we're going to stick our ice on top of our little bowl here. We made it a nice little bowl so we could fit a couple pieces of ice on top of it, and then we're going to let that sit for a bit. And then after that, we're going to open up our lid on our jar, and we're going to give it a nice spray with our spray. And it looks like it's about done. Okay, we've got the water in there, so like I mentioned, we're going to be placing the lid back on, upside down, make sure it's sealed, and we're going to grab a couple pieces of ice and we're going to place it right on there. And now we just wait for about 30 seconds, and we're going to let it do its thing. Let it cool on the top, and we're going to keep it warm on the bottom. It won't take very long at all, and then we're going to remove that, and we're going to give it a little spray inside of there. Okay, and now it's been enough time, so we're going to remove the lid, and very, very quickly, give it a spray, and seal it. And just like before, make sure that there are no openings on the top for it to escape early. Well, we've got the spray in there, and the hot water in the bottom, and the ice on top. Just give it a little bit, and I can already start to see a cloud forming in there. Swirling clouds near the top. Oh, some of it's starting to leak out. We'll just give it a little bit, let it do its thing, and let it continue to form the swirling cloud within our cool jar. If you're going to touch the jar, make sure not to touch it at the bottom where the water is. Even though it's a new container, it can still be very hot, especially if it's made of glass. I I think as you can see, there's already a cloud that's formed inside the jar. It's foggy, it's kind of murky to see through. And now if we're to lift the lid, our very cool cloud in a jar should try to escape. Whoa! Look at that. Now that is cool. It almost looks like smoke. We've created a cloud within our jar using the hot water, using the air freshener spray or the hairspray, and using ice on the top. And now that we've let it out, the air and the clouds are escaping. But why? Why is it that you think that we were able, with these materials, to make a cloud inside this jar? Was it all this? Well, actually, the cloud is mostly water vapor. And if we go back to talking about the states of matter, we remember that there are 3 states of matter. There's solids, which in this case for water would be ice. If you heat up a solid, it becomes a liquid, which fills the container it's in, hence water. But there's another state that water can turn into that we used in this experiment. If you heat up water, ice melts into water. But if you heat up water, it evaporates into a gas, into water vapor, which is kind of like stuff in the air. And by heating up the water, it evaporated into the water vapor. Because as you put temperature into water, it changes state. You heat up ice, it melts into water. You heat up water, it evaporates into water vapor. And vice versa, if you were to cool water, decrease the temperature, it changes state as well. When you freeze water, when you cool water, it freezes into ice. And when you cool water vapor, it turns back into water. Now that's the thing. If you take a look around the top of this glass, there are little water droplets on it. Now that's because the water vapor in the air cooled and turned back into water. We call this condensing. The water vapor condensed back into the water and tried to look for something to stick to. It wasn't able to stay a gas anymore, so it turned back into a liquid. Because the ice up here cooled the water vapor and forced it back into a liquid, condensed it into a liquid, and it looked for anything to stick to, and that includes the particles on the spray that we put in there. So when the water vapor cooled down and it couldn't be a gas anymore, it turned back into water, the liquid, it looked for the sides of the jar to stick to, and also the floating particles from our spray in there. And that created our cloud. And that's very similar to how clouds are created in the real atmosphere. If you look up the clouds in the sky, oftentimes water evaporated into water vapor, went into the sky, and then it got cold enough in the sky that they started to turn back into a liquid. And so they stuck to what was up there. So they might have stuck to dust, they might have stuck to pollen in the air. Even really cool stuff like volcano ash that's in the air can make clouds if water vapor sticks to it and becomes water again. They condense back into water. And it's a really, really cool mixture of the states of matter and understanding the water cycle that let this experiment work the way it did. So I really, really hope that you enjoyed this. This is one of my favorite experiments just for how much it can show you about how the world and the atmosphere works around us. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more cool experiments coming straight to you on the Independence Public Library Facebook page. As for that, though, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day and take care. Bye-bye.